Ooh, look, even more codex. First Blight, Chapter 2. Dumont rises. People today have little concept of the consequences of the second sin. Oh, believe me when I say that when asked, pious, chantry-going folk will curse the use of foul magic, spitting and snapping their fingers, but none live today who actually remember the horror that was unleashed so very long ago. Whatever records might have existed, regrettably did not survive the chaos and ignorance that was to follow. We have... Oh, my word. I totally closed that. History of the Chantry. First Blight. Whatever records might have existed, regrettably did not survive the chaos and ignorance that was to follow. We have only the tales of survivors handed down through the murky ages and the dogma of the Chantry to instruct us, and that is precious little indeed. I believe I am not understating when I say that the second sin unleashed the bane of all life upon Thetis. The darkspawn are more virulent than the worst plague, a heartless force of nature that came into our world like an ill wind. We know from accounts of later blights, as these darkspawn invasions came to be called, never has a more appropriate name existed, that the darkspawn spread disease and famine wherever they tread. The earth itself is corrupted by their presence, the sky roiling with angry black clouds. I do not exaggerate, my friends, when I say that a mass gathering of darkspawn is an omen of dread cataclysm. It is said that those cursed magisters who became the first darkspawn scratched at the very earth to find solace in the darkness of the dwarven deep rose, and there in the shadows they multiplied. Whether by intelligent design or by some last vestige of worship in their minds, they attempted to locate the old gods they had once served. They found what they sought, Dumont, the first among the old gods, once known as the Dragon of Silence before the Maker imprisoned him and his brethren, all his brethren beneath the earth for the first sin, usurping the Maker's place in mankind's heart. The slumbering dragon awoke, freed from the Maker's prison by his twisted followers, and became corrupted himself. Dumont was transformed into the first archdemon, his great and terrible power given will by a rotting and holy mind. With the darkspawn horde following, Dumont rose and took wing in the skies once again, bringing ruin to the world the Maker had created. The old god had become the eye of a dark storm that would ravage the entire world. From Tales of the Destruction of Thetis by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. Ooh, so we get to meet the person who writes a whole lot of this. Great big whoop-de-doo. Get to talk to a scholar. A pile of books with more codex. History of Ferelden, Chapter 1. Ooh, more long bit of codex to read. Ferelden, as we think of it now, did not exist before the Exalted Age. Instead, the valley was divided up into dozens of old Alamari clans. They warred constantly with one another over land, honor, the allegiance of the freeholders, and on one notable occasion, the name given to a favorite Mabari. I can read. Of course I can. And then, in the 33rd year of the Exalted Age, Calenhad Theron became Terran of Denerim, and everything changed. Most of what we know about the founding of our nation comes from old songs that the bards passed down through the ages. The songs are filled with wild exaggerations and outright lies, but this hardly differs from the scholarly papers of some of my contemporaries. There is no agreement among poets or scholars on how he did it, but Calenhad gained the support of the Circle of Magi, and they crafted for him a suit of silvery white armor that, by all accounts, repelled both arrow and blade. Calenhad led his army across the valley and captured Redcliffe, one of only 3 men who ever successfully laid siege to that fortress, and presented himself to the bands of the Landsmeet as their king. The poets tell us that every lord knelt before Calenhad without question. The fact that he attended the Landsmeet surrounded by ash warriors and loyal mages of the Circle is generally omitted from the ballads, however. From Calenhad came the line of Theran kings and queens who reigned uninterrupted until the 44th year of the Blessed Age, when the Elysian invasion came. The rightful king was forced to flee Denerim, and for 70 years a puppet sat upon a throne. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Yeah, Arleman is out cold right now. Yeah, I'm not interested in talking to the kid. I'm interested in seeing what's in here. Abilene. Aveline was born to an Orlesian farmer near the city of Halamshiral in the early half of the Storm Age. She was a large and ugly baby, and her father had hoped for a boy. Not wanting another mouth to feed, the farmer left Aveline in the woods to die from exposure. Ugh, excuse me. But a traveling band of Dalish elves came upon the crying child. The elves took her into their clan and raised her as their own. They taught her archery, dueling, and survival skills. When she came of age, she was larger and stronger than most women, let alone elven women. Her adoptive parents knew that she was a fine warrior, so they encouraged her to enter a human tournament in nearby Onsamard. But women were not permitted to join the knighthood in Orlais, nor to compete in a tournament, so Aveline joined the tournament as a man. Her clan forged a suit of armor with a full helm and gave her an iron-barked sword of the finest quality. Aveline entered the competition claiming to be a knight of Antiva. She refused to doff her helmet even during the archery competition, and sure enough, Aveline bested many other knights until, in the grand melee, she came upon Kaliva, a knight who served the emperor and was considered the finest in the land. Kaliva was determined not to be beaten and struck swiftly and strongly. As Aveline matched each of his blows, Kaliva grew ever more frustrated. Finally, in desperation, he tripped Aveline and threw her to the ground. The blow knocked her helm from her head, and Kaliva was shamed. He called to have the competition declared invalid, but the crowd booed and jeered, and in anger, Kaliva turned and slew Aveline as she lay helpless. The son of the emperor, Prince Freyan, was also present at the tourney. He too had been beaten by Aveline, but he recognized her skill and bravery and was saddened by the injustice of her death. Upon rising to the emperor's seat in 744 Storm, Freyan abolished the law that disallowed women from joining the Orlesian knighthood and posthumously knighted Aveline. Although women in the Orlesian knighthood are still a rarity today, all those who do become knights revere Sir Aveline as their patron. Aveline, Knight of Orlais, by Lord Francois Magni, I don't know how to pronounce that, 8-4 blessed. Is there anything else in here? No. So, I continue on down. The game saves itself for no apparent reason. I go down this ramp. That's an interesting painting, I suppose. Okay, so yeah, that I remember where that goes. That's a armory, basically. There's a chest in there. And a chest in here. Chest that is unlocked, by the way. Take all of that.
All right.
Lost a couple fire arrows, but I don't care too much about fire arrows. Journal of the Tranquil. Some laugh at me. I no longer mind. Once upon a time, I studied as they did. I learned under the tutelage of an enchanter and attempted to master the art of bending magic to my will. And while I did well enough, I know that I struggled. I saw the way the enchanter looked at me, the sidelong glances of worry and disappointment. While other apprentices were conjuring fire, I could barely light a candle. I was frightened of magic. When I was a boy, my grandmother regaled me with tales of the terrible Flemeth, the Witch of the Wilds. She told me of the Magisters and how their evil magic infected the world with the darkspawn. She told me of demons and how they were drawn to the dreams of those who possessed magic like moths to a flame. She told me all these things because she said the talent ran in our family's blood. And so it ran in mine. All my young life I had dreaded the thought, prayed to the Maker that I was not so cursed, but I knew otherwise. Deep in my heart I knew. When the Templars came to our home, I knew. The Mage's Tower was terrifying, full of secrets and danger. The Templars glared at me as if I could spring into a full abomination. before their very eyes. My enchanter patiently attempted to teach me to marshal my willpower, my only defense should a demon attempt to enslave me, but it was no use. How many nights did I cry myself to sleep in the dark and lonely place? Then my harrowing came at last, my final test. Face a demon, they said, or submit to the rite of tranquility. They would sever my connection to the Fade, and thus I would never dream, and no demon could ever touch me, but I would also be unable to do magic, and I would never feel an emotion ever again. Facing the demon was certain death, so my choice was easy. It was not so painful. Now I serve in other ways. We tranquil manage the archives, we run the tower, purchase the supplies, and maintain the accounts. Our condition also allows us to use the magical element lyrium without ill effect, and thus we are the ones who enchant the magical items. We are the merchants who sell these items to those the circle permits, and the coin from those sales provides the circle's wealth. Thus we tranquil are vital. The young and old may stare at me ill at ease, but they would be worse off without me. They may think me a failure, but there is no horror for me now. I feel no fear of what I am. The shadows are merely shadows, and I am content. Eden the meek, tranquil of the circle of Magi of Starkhaven, the free marches. Yep, not unsettling at all. Nope. That's totally normal. Note the sarcasm.
Going.
What's this? A lesser health poultice. The kingdom of Ferelden is the southernmost civilized nation in Thedas, although some scholars dispute that claim to civilization. It is perhaps the most physically isolated of all the kingdoms of Thedas. To the east is the Amaranthine Ocean, to the north the Waking Sea, and to the south the Kokari Wilds, which in the summer months are a vast peat bog, and in the winter become a treacherous labyrinth of iced-over waterways. The Frostback Mountains guard the western border, and only a narrow plain between the mountains and the sea allows travel between Ferelden and Orlais. Most of the land in the central portion of the kingdom, called the Benorn, is open plains. These are crossed by the remnants of an ancient Tevinter highway that once connected Val Royeaux with Ostagar, on the edge of the Korkari Wilds. The western part of Ferelden is dominated by Lake Calenhad, a huge caldera filled by the runoff of glaciers from nearby mountains. Lake Calenhad is home to the famed fortress of Redcliffe, as well as the Circle Tower, which houses Ferelden's Circle of Magi. In the east is the West Brisilian Forest, which the superstitious locals profess to be haunted, and from which rises the Dragon's Peak, a solitary mountain that guards the capital city of Denerim. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, the Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitivi. Boop-a-doop-a-doop. And thus we have even more codex. One random servant just standing there staring at a wall. I have to question her sanity. Trying to remember.
I'm off.
The Orlesian Empire. There are many lords and ladies in Val Royeaux, and I mean this literally. Once the system of noble titles in Orlais was labyrinthine. There were barons and baroness and baronets and sir barons and hordes of others, each with its own origins and its own nuances of comparison. The Orlesian aristocracy is ancient and much given to competition. As the nobility play the grand game, as it is known, whether they wish to or not. It is a game of reputation and patronage, where moves are made with rumors and scandal is the chief weapon. No gentle game, this. More blood has been drawn as a result of the grand game than any war the Orlesians have fought. Of this I am assured by almost every gentleman here. As far as titles went, everything changed with the coming of Emperor Draken, who established the Orlesian Empire as it exists now, and who created the Chantry. There is no more venerated figure in Orlais. In Valroyo, the statue of Draken stands as tall as the statue of Andraste. Draken determined that the grand game was tearing Orlais apart, so he abolished all titles besides his own and Lord and Lady. I am told with some twittering amusement that this action did not end the grand game as Draken had intended. Now the lords and ladies collected unofficial titles rather than official ones, such as the exalted patron of Tassus Clay, or uncle to the champion of Tremes. It is a headache to remember such titles, and one winces to think of the poor doormen at the balls who must rattle them off as each guest enters the room. The aristocracy is different from Ferelden in other ways as well. The Orlesians' right to rule stems directly from the Maker. There exists neither the concept of rule by merit nor the slightest notion of rebellion. If one is not noble, one aspires to be, or the least aspires to be in the good graces of a noble, and is ever watching for a way to enter the patronage of those better placed in the grand game. And then there are the masks and the cosmetics. I have not seen so much paint since the kennels at Highever, but that is another story. From Beyond the Frostbacks by Ban Teoric of Westhill 920 Dragon. This is the Orlais is one of those strange things.
Right.
As you may have noticed, I picked up something that says Alistair's mother's amulet. I'm trying to remember if he actually brought that up in conversation yet, and if he has, and I find out that he has, like I don't see it in conversation later on, then I'll hand it over to him. But so far, I don't recall him saying anything of the sort about it. So right now, I'm not handing that over to him. Now I am heading back to camp, however.